each other. So thank you so much for your time, Valerie, all the way from the west coast of America, United States of America. And you have been invited to talk to us, to the European Postnatal Support Network, to speak about your work in America and also overseas. And your work is captured in a book that had a recent edition, or I think it's not recent, but 2 years ago you kind of re-edited a little bit. I'll hold it up, called The Mummy Plan. And it got our attention because of the practicality of it and also the research that you've added. So, Valerie, can you share a little bit about how come you came to write this book? What was your inspiration?
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for being here. It's nice to virtually meet everyone, and I'm happy to have this this opportunity to speak with you, and that you find valuable information in my book. The book was born, so to speak, was because I experienced postpartum anxiety and OCD after the birth of my son in 2007. I always say he was made in Malaysia, then born in America, and then went back to Malaysia when he was 3 months. It wasn't planned that way. Different things in life took me back to the US to have him there. And through that experience, realized the huge void in afterbirth knowledge. And because I knew I wasn't too familiar with it yet in Malaysia, I did take some prenatal classes, but I knew there was a specific sequence and care that was offered that everyone had. So when I went back, my son was born May 2007, went back 3 months later, and I took up the position of executive director of the American Chamber of Commerce 4 months later. And at that time, I realized, like looking back, I had started to experience postpartum anxiety and OCD. Now, because Malaysia has the lowest rates of postpartum mood disorders at just 3%, no one talked about it. It's always underreported. There's no doctors, there's no organizations, nothing. So I wasn't sure what was happening, but I had a clean mental health history, but I was having all these intrusive thoughts that I was going to accidentally, hurt my baby or kill my son. Like, it was very irrational from a very rational person with a corporate background that, planned strategic, business consultant. And so I couldn't tell anybody because I didn't understand it. So then Mother's Day, the following year, 2008, my son was born in May 2007, Mother's Day 2008, reading articles online out of America where postpartum mood disorders are epidemic, and they still are. The penny dropped what I was experiencing. And I was like, wow, okay. Now it's almost 50% of a relief, what I was feeling. Then that same moment, when I on the computer, and I was like, I knew Malaysia had these specifics. I knew what my friends, not understanding what they went through, local and expat, came back after 30 days. You didn't see them. And they were like, wow, you look fantastic. God, you're fitting in jeans. You're doing this. You look great. That's when I found out Malaysia's low rates. And I immediately bought a postnatal spa package. And I had the body treatments and the herbal remedies and the foods. I just kind of looked up more and more. And I rebalanced myself naturally in about 3 months. Very focused. So that's how my journey started. And then I was just absolutely hooked. And so because of my position at the American Chambers and my personal relationships with people in the Malaysian government, I was able to self-fund a study through the Ministry of Health, through the Traditional Complementary Medicine Department. And I went into hospitals and the field, government organizations, massage schools, spas, manufacturers, all within that postnatal industry and community. And I reverse engineered their practices. So I figured, find out why they're the lowest, because, I lived in Japan for 5 years. That's a great diet. You can understand that's healthy. Malaysia, I couldn't figure it out because the food wasn't healthy. It's delicious, right? But, it wasn't very healthy with sugars and, the curries and the palm oil. And so I figured it out. And it has to do with understanding the postnatal anatomy and what happens. as soon as you birth the placenta. And they break it down week by week, very specifically in what's happening with the body. And they start early on day one. And so when I was doing my research and I was like, okay, we have a baby plan, we have, like a house plan, birthing plan. We have a baby plan for the house, birthing plan, but we have no mommy plan. So that's how I came up with the title of the mommy plan.
And so you mentioned in Malaysia, you've done this for specific research. Does that mean that even in countries like Malaysia, unto this day, there is like a system-wide, countrywide um, health system that is very specifically for those first, say, 6 or 8 weeks, or is it very specific for expat women?
No, this is the best kept secret for Malaysia, and even the Malaysian government. Any woman that gives birth in a public hospital is entitled to 6 free body treatments, massages, and abdominal wrappings, all within the first 6 weeks. Starting day 5 or targeting day 5, must start by day 7, finishing by day 44. Okay, for all natural births, no complication. So they provide that. That's their maternal health care policy. The private hospitals all offer this, but this is a public policy that the Malaysian government invests in women.
So you thought we need to bring some of this awareness back into the States because of the epidemic numbers of people going through depression after labor, right?
Absolutely. And when I would, before my research, and I would meet, women and, mothers of my friends, and they had like 10 children, 7 children. And I was like, you look fantastic, and even with menopause, where when I was talking to women through my research, I said, yeah, we just stopped having our menses, but we didn't have any of these, crazy thoughts or hot flashes or that we do. And so they link, the recovery of the womb and the restoration after childbirth directly to menopause.
Yeah. So it's a long-term investment that obviously the Malaysian government understands.
Mm-hmm.
But you have made quite an effort of being a young mother in America and actually writing the book to make sure. Can you just kind of share a little bit how that was? You're writing a book, you're having a young baby. Um, what did you feel that you needed to express in this book? What was your motivation?
It was, I was living in Malaysia. I was married at the time. I also there, was able to have, live in help. So that helped greatly. And I just felt called to figure out in a way what they did so I could explain it to countries and middle class moms across the world what you can do, because in Malaysia it's not just it's not for the elite, and it's for everybody across the board. And I thought it was really important to do that. And so I took the core tenets, because each state in Malaysia has a little bit of different cultural things that they do. But so I took just the core, the basics, about 13 or 14, and I put the food science behind, the postnatal, the food science, and then the anatomy, behind that, to figure out, okay, why do they say don't drink cold things? Why do they say avoid tomatoes? Why, do they, some of them avoid eggs? What is why? So I took it and I reverse engineered that, then I took it to the anatomy, and took what they talked about in many, many conversations and thought about it in a more scientific way that I can understand it and explain it to Western women, because we really need this. Because that same day when I found out what I had, postpartum anxiety and OCD, I looked at the rates in America. Because I'm a statistics person, the 20 to 25% equated to 1 million new cases per year that were existing in America, not including the existing, you can double it, not including the underreported. So you're really talking about me at 1.3 million plus women in the United States that are suffering from it. And I wanted to impact that number, which is still ongoing, because it's still a struggle, even with organizations that focus on postpartum support, like Postpartum Support International. I've been the international country coordinator for Malaysia for like 11 years. But they've never once asked me to speak or do an interview at their conference when Malaysia has the lowest rates.
Yeah.
So I don't understand still. And I stopped asking. I love the organization. I promote it. We do great work, but I don't understand. I'm not a person that looks to global benchmarks, and we must in this case. And so I don't know how to explain the disinterest, but I'm on a policy committee for California. I'm postpartum resource advisor for state of New York. But again, they don't ask me much. They want me, but they don't know how, when it's a real implementation.
I think it's challenging also because I think that you speak from a voice of an experienced mother. And policymakers are just not so familiar with inviting the voice of the mothers into the debate about policies. So this is also what we encounter in Europe is a challenging thing, is how can we raise our voices of the experienced mothers in this whole debate. So, but just to go back to your book, because I think your book did kind of raise a voice that helped a difference. I'm sure that there's many mothers that you've inspired in America and even, also worldwide. Can you kind of very briefly explain what are the basics for this mother plan, the mummy plan? What is absolute for the viewers and specifically for mothers that are preparing themselves for postpartum? What for you would be the basics to think about if you're preparing yourself?
Okay, so the basics. First of all, we must realize that planning for your recovery is paramount. And it's paramount so you're not in situations that you don't understand what you're hormonally, physically, or emotionally going through, and it empowers you. So it's not to be afraid, but you should not have a random recovery from childbirth. It should be planned. And it should be planned from day one, not after 6 weeks. And it's not your conventional type of recovery. It's natural, and it's doing less is more, and understanding why, and allowing the body to heal during that crucial healing window of opportunity, I call it, during the first 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, so it's starting day one. And for example, what I tell my clients and students is the first 4 days should be devoted to the perineum. Okay, so healing the perineum through a sitz bath that has, like wound healing properties in the ingredients, and all of this is natural. And I represent, a Malaysian line of postnatal products in the U.S., and I ship all over the world because I know how they are. I've been dealing with them the last 12 years. So in addition to the sitz bath that has the, in my opinion, that has, the turmeric and the ginger and other things that are wound healing, you also need some ingredients that are traditional feminine health care, which is roots, barks, leaves, or flowers that help that process. So the first 4 days, we start day one with a sitz bath, 20 minutes, and that's 4 days. And there's a process to go through with it, because your breast milk is coming in, you're exhausted from birth, whether you've had a cesarean, a surgical birth, or natural birth, vaginal birth. So that is one of the things that we do, and it makes a real difference by day 5, when that's the targeted day to start the other combination products and recovery, and to deal with the digestion. So it's good to re-educate yourself on what's happening in the body, because women don't understand it. Because there's really, the condition of a woman's body after childbirth is significant. And there is so many things going on, and you go back to the hot state, cold state, from a hot state pregnancy, and then you go to the cold state. And how does that cold state affect the body? How do we disrupt it? So with Malaysia, which the protocol is made up of Chinese, Indian, and Malay, because of the economic development of the country and the spice route and the Commonwealth influence. So Malaysia is a Commonwealth country, and so they've been so lucky to have a Chinese and Indian cultures, communities brought over in different ways. So you have those two best known in the world because of internet and things written in English. Then you have the Malay, that's like one of the least known. And when I wrote my book also because there were no books written in English about this. And there's only one book that I have that's written, and it's more of a spirit in Bahasa Melayu, the local language, that's more of a spiritual. So I wanted to get into the practical, and let's, because that's what we want to do. So you have two of the best known, one of the most holistic combined to make these this winning trifecta. So I think that's why it also works so well.
So you have the first days, and then you have, of course, the cold and the heat that we also speak about in Ayurveda. The vata, that the air needs to be taken out in order for the heat to kind of come back. Is there something in the Malay or in your own kind of ideas about the support system? We feel that there's so much loneliness around, and problems that arise with that loneliness in a young mother's life. Can you say something about that?
So especially during now with COVID, so many women have been so stressed about during pregnancy and afterwards because they've been isolated. So partners, husbands, partners, your birth professional, some family members that you're going to allow in your home, which I would limit because the baby's immune system doesn't have the immune system, right? So it builds up over this first 6 months, as well as the mom's compromised immune system for the first 6 months. They can play a crucial role. Again, it goes into the planning, okay? And what they can do, how they can help you with the baby care, with body care. So for me, my perspective is a lot of body care and the food. And you can have your food supply chain and what do you call it, meal train. But for me, let's take it one step closer, because my lovely doula friends here, they're like, great, making my client this macaroni and cheese, and I'm like, oh great, it's a comfort food, but it's a food. But let's take it one step further and see who wants to sign up for that. You can have your doula do this, friend. We're gonna have a meal train. Let's make it a postpartum meal train. So let's just customize it one step deeper than having someone make you a lasagna, which is not good for the digestive system at this time, because it goes back, because do you talk about the weakened digestive system, right? So normally it's the digestive, circulation, and metabolism are the three main functions of the human body. When you give birth, they become secondary, and the postpartum functions of breast milk production, hormonal rebalancing, and shedding the retained elements of water, fat, and flatulence become primary. So you're looking at everything from this stalled backdrop that will speed up eventually. But this is so there's all these things you have to realize in your mind what's going to happen. That's why the shift from the hot to the cold state, why this happens, how cold affects the postnatal anatomy. And so it's that really special time that so many things are going to affect that. And you have the release. So again, we take it 3 phases. Phase 1 is week 1, phase 2 is week 2, phase 3 is week 3 to 6. And so we support those systems that detailed. So what I find, husbands, partners, you got to realize what's their strength and what's their weakness. If your husband or your partner doesn't cook, they're not going to magically cook. So let's kind of fill that in. Okay, are they cool with setting up some products for you, a sitz bath, making a herbal bath, which can be all. See, for me, I do everything simple. I have sheets, I have daily product usage, I have videos. I've made it so simple that men and partners can just step up in ways that they're comfortable with, or they maybe want to try. But sometimes the mom's expectation doesn't meet the reality. And that's and she's so, vulnerable and hormonal that, something could set her off, and that disrupts the healing process. So we go through, what can the support system do? Let's hone it a bit more to make it not just a support system, but a postnatal support system like the meal train. What are partners comfortable with? And let's decide that in the plan so it can be executed from day one and they have direction, and so then, we always check in with them afterwards. So and then realizing how, just everyone, we're all about, visiting and things, but realizing maybe how that can impact, someone, and how, negatively if they bring something in. You know, we have this, this Delta variant now with COVID. So people are swinging a little bit back to being a little more paranoid again, which is warranted because we don't know much about it. And so we do this scenario planning on what the mom's also going to experience, like postpartum migraines are becoming very prevalent here. I just think because you're exposed to chemicals in the air and pollution and in the food. So what can you do if you have postpartum headache? What do you do if you're bleeding again? What happens? So we scenario plan, and so people can understand how they can act, and partners can understand this too. When I have people contact me with PSI, the husbands are the ones that, if they're in tune, they say, this is happening and that's happening and I'd understand. Or the moms are like, no one believes me, this is happening. So it's really creating that support network for that family and pulling in people that are willing to do it even for 4 weeks. People are, with the new babies, they're always willing to step up a bit, right? And do something special. So really try to take advantage of the help during that time.
It's nice to read that you had dedicated a whole chapter on partners and how important they are in not only kind of detecting if something goes wrong, but actually involve them actively in the support network. And I even understood that partners actually go through their own postpartum mood swings as well, right?
Of
Sleep
course.
variation, even hormonal changes with the fathers.
Now, how can
So
you not? There's energy in the house, and they go through, also just, okay, they're going to be the breadwinner for a while. That's a huge financial, responsibility, and so it's a lot of stress that, you got to have open lines of communication.
absolutely. And what I wanted to ask is also your views. Here in the Europe, you see that there is a tendency to uh, disconnect from natural support that is happening around the young mother because the father's there and he will take care of it. So, the partners, especially in Nordic countries and more Northern European countries, they have a leave for almost like 6 weeks up to a couple of months to
Mm-hmm.
be with the family. It's a little bit less in Holland,
Mm-hmm.
but it almost feels like the partner is now the support network, while we believe, or we kind of also look at how can we support the partner, because also the partner needs to have a support network where he can actually kind of distract himself sometimes from the little bubble.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
it's also something I think for the partner, no, to also create that network in form of meal trainer.
Exactly, because they're not having the experience of birth. And so they're not sure what to do. They approach it in a lot of a practical manner sometimes, and also emotional thing, but they're looking for direction and what to do. And so this is why the plan comes in place. This is why they can also, Malaysians do, again, another preventative measure is colic. So I really get into the bathing and the colic massage, and the preventative for colic massage, and the wrapping of the abdominal for the baby, things like that. So you can give them maybe jobs, and then there's support system that they can call. And I think I know things are very spontaneous, and moms are recovering from pregnancy and from childbirth. So the effects of pregnancy, and then we have to see how the childbirth went. So it is as and when as you go along on daily, and you have to be able to be spontaneous and change things. But let's pull it out of the plan. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens with mom? So just giving them a re-education on what's happening, and so dads don't feel like they're winging it. I feel winging it is, in this case, doesn't have the best results. But we need partners, because like in Asia and other cultures that have a credible postnatal practices and recovery, they don't have them. So it's even more important to educate people and provide. They don't have the human resource. They don't have the products. it's been a real eye opener for me over the last 12 years. Because I had like zero, I didn't even take one, I took like one prenatal class. Like that's it when I was having my son. No Lamaze, no this, no breastfeeding. I thought, I live in 5 countries, I consult for corporations. This is nothing, not nothing, but I can handle this, right?
Mhm.
No, so different. It was just, it changed the whole, direction of my life. It was not a fun first year. It was really hard. Plus I moved back to Malaysia. I was in the US, moved back to Malaysia, had all that to deal with. And I don't want people to go through it. Thank God I had help, live-in help, that I don't know what would have happened, without that.
And you had your applied intelligence to realize that this is something that might also, be of benefit of your health in the long term, right? And
I didn't realize it then. I've realized it now, how it good. And then, because I didn't have a really good recovery, um, it just, you do have this long-term, health things that happened. But it's a real eye opener, and I would like to prevent that for people in a way that don't make them afraid for planning, make them empower them, like you said, and give them the confidence and realize they need it. And having to be served, as you mentioned, we were talking in the pre-talk, a pre-discussion about being served and accepting that and trusting the person that's doing that.
mm, I think
Um,
that's a good topic also to end our conversation, and this kind of goes into the kind of personal politics of this work is how can we allow ourselves to be served? And interestingly, I feel in my own work and what I see in the work field is that it is actually the partners that are easier to accept help than the mother. The mother,
mm,
I don't know how we've programmed, but we have this idea of I need to manage it all by myself. I don't want to be vulnerable or saying that I cannot deal with the things that I can deal with. And the only motivation that we hear or that we hear from mothers is when we say that if you ask for help, you're actually allowing your peers to be present in one of the most transformative moments in your life. And
mhm,
that's where they think, oh yeah, that makes sense. So not even allowing it
mhm.
for themselves, but actually allowing it for the external world to come in and actually serve them. So let's shine your light. I'm very curious to hear what you think of that calling out for help and the relevance of that.
Well, it's really a product of the rise of feminism. And I would never like change something, but for feminism, with the right to vote, and then the 70s and work, and women in our generation couldn't even have a credit card or things like that. And it was always back to the support of the husband. And so there's things where we should have, of course, these equal rights, but we shouldn't feel like just because we need help that we're weak, because we're not weak. And I see this so many times with the women that are just, I can do this, I can do that, where they've, when they come in here, because I'm in a pregnancy services collective, and we have home birth midwives, and we have, perinatal psychologists and lactation consultants. So I see the moms that do come in, and they're frazzled. And even here, when I'm in, they're still not fully embracing like what I do and how it helps. And even though it's natural, it can help the body. So it was also surprising because it's a real grassroots movement, but women, and then with them being given the amount of time that they feel that their body needs. And I always see, and you probably see this, I always see the regression in week 3, because week 1 and week 2, they're actually physically like getting recovered from birth. Week 3, they start doing something. They'll wake up one morning, I feel good, let's try to resume things, and bam.
Go down.
Yeah, always week 3 that happens. So we're programmed to do everything men can do better, better, faster. And so it's this mindset
Mm.
of, that's why in Asia, you have help, you come in, and also there's a pride, doing things that, with your hands still. is still has a lot of respect and honor in Asia and other cultures that are not first world and rely on this manufacturing. You know what I mean? So there's that pride, and I see it, and it's really wonderful. So it's a whole mindset.
Mm,
So reaching people here has been challenging,
mhm, mhm.
and you have to combine pregnancy with postpartum. You can't just, I find, focus on the postpartum. It's just not enough. They have to have that transition, and they realize the transition from the third to the fourth trimester. So we try to help them along that way, getting ready for childbirth. I don't do so much of it because I focus on the fourth trimester, but I've incorporated that into it and how it can help.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of doulas that are watching us speaking about this. Doulas that are trained as pre and perinatal support and are moving their ambition and also their looks towards postpartum. Is there any last tip that you can give them? How can we make sure that this is also priority for the mother? What can we say? What can we do?
You have to plant that seed early. I try to plant that seed from, the first meeting, whether they're coming at like 20 weeks, 30 weeks. I like to start education like 30 weeks. So you have to drip that for your client and link it to their specific situation, how it's going to help them. And and I don't know, like in the US, it has benefited me with the science behind it. And I have a class that I teach at the Malaysian Permanent Mission to the United Nations. I teach a class called the Multicultural Postpartum Recovery Care. And, what I teach in that is how to set the mindset for the mom early, and also get into a business module that helps the doulas and that as well, because this, I feel, is just like, it's a grassroots movement, but it's one of the biggest wellness trends, in the world that's happening. But there's just not a huge collective that, is depicting like, this from India, this from China, this from Mexico, this from Africa. They're putting it together. And sometimes it just doesn't, it's all the same, but different. It doesn't match sometimes, whether it's a smell, products, thought, because there are some completely clashing, like the Malays don't believe no egg, no egg yolks for at least 10 to 14 days. India's eggs, China's eggs. And why? Because they're worried about the chicken hormone, another female chicken hormone from coming into the body. And so there's things that, right, so that doesn't work. So that's one of the things I have to say. This is one of the protocols, but it's interpreted differently. So you have to, it's really to the client, but it's starting early, knowing your products. When you're researching, really look at your resource and what how what they're looking at. And opinion versus fact, and cultural opinion and then fact, right? You have to realize what's coming for them, but you need to start earlier and having confidence in a protocol. And I would be, I'd love to offer, my course to your network. I'm getting it online. I've been asked for many years to put it online because I love doing things in person. I always did that. And actually I was being invited before COVID over to Europe, to Italy, Spain, UK.
Wow.
But
It's a lot of
then
work.
COVID.
It's a lot of work to do it online, but we definitely look forward to that. I think the book is already a good start to kind of go through it. It's very practical, as I say. It has a lot of
Yeah.
research background, and I really like it because it has a root also in traditional practices, ancient postpartum practices, which is something that we kind of obviously tap into in this
Yes.
work.
So
And
that's the next one. So this is the cookbook. Okay, that's like, so this is new. This was like December last year. And so I took like the postnatal practice, I took the postnatal food science and I applied it to a Western diet and lifestyle. Okay, so you have some food science in the beginning. Oh, I try to explain to like to Western culture, Americans. So you have like a meatloaf, you have a healthy meatloaf, then you have a postnatal meatloaf, right? So, and how the body, and so what helps the body at this time? It's all about warming, stimulation, and circulation.
And this is not only a cookbook for mothers that are preparing for postpartum, but this is also specifically a book for her support network to know what kind of food they are preparing.
Exactly. So it's healing meals, simple recipes for new moms, but it's also like simple recipes for people that, you know, who aren't chefs or home cooks. It's more simple than you'd think.
In the link to this video, we will add the link where you can buy this book, and you'll see some photos of it also on online.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
covered.
So just to reiterate, so mine is, I don't think I said this, mine is Valerie Lynn. My company is Post Pregnancy Wellness, and my website is ecopostnatalcare.com, and you could find out information about me and you know, my work.
And your work. Thank you so much for being that lighthouse in the ocean for American and even women overseas. And it's
Thank you
always a
for having
blessing to
me.
speak to equal-minded people, understanding the relevance of this work. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
You're welcome.